decided to do a live conversation, a live discussion, open discussion about mental health and the pandemic and how much has it affected us and how it's impacting us. So we're looking at the past, present, and the future in terms of the pandemic and how we will be either coping, thriving, or just surviving. And so we have many people in our panel who are basically advocates of mental health, who work in mental health and wear many hats. However, they're strong, powerful, and empowering women within the mental health realm. So without further ado, I will introduce Ms. Sena Asyama. She's a registered nurse in the region of Ottawa. Hi, welcome.
Thank you.
We have Sophie Gomez, who is also another nurse. She is a geriatric rehab nurse. Hi, Sophie.
Hey.
Hi there. We also have Ms. Nora Elmi. She holds a master's degree in social work. She also is a strong advocate in mental health for women of color and Indigenous women. Thank you so much, Nora, for being here with us. We have Stephanie Bibo. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for being part of us. She is part of an employee assistance program, and many of us have this program in our line of work as well. So thank you so much, Stephanie, for being part of tonight's event.
Hi, thank you.
And last but not least, we have Simone Choi. She wears many hats, as you'll get to see throughout the conversation and discussion tonight. She has a 20-year span of experience, not only in mental health, but she's a life coach. She's also an entrepreneur. She's built schools. And so we're so happy to have her with us, and her experience will be well noted and needed in this discussion. Welcome, Simone.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi there. So as I was saying, part of the reason why we're having this discussion is because mental health is such a huge discussion, is such a huge topic, namely anxiety and depression. These are the two topics. And then there's trauma, but trauma becomes a different avenue that we'll touch on later on today. But anxiety has become such a big topic when we're talking about the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. And so in the midst of Mental Health Awareness Month, we thought of having this discussion amongst ourselves. And again, this is a disclaimer. We are not your healthcare providers, okay? This is an open discussion to provide, it's opinion-based. If you do have concerns, please make sure that you do talk to your own healthcare providers. This is, I guess, an avenue for you to ask questions for sure, because we're all healthcare providers, but unfortunately, we will not be able to provide you with personal counseling. However, this webinar will be until 8:30. We can stay a bit longer if you do have questions, or if you don't want to personally share your story, we can definitely stay with you and answer some of your personal questions. Okay, now to start. So thank you, ladies, once again for being a part of this webinar. In terms of mental health, I just need to start it off. Why is it such a huge discussion when we're talking about COVID-19 and anxiety?
Okay, I'll go. I'll answer that. I think part of the reason why it's such a huge stressor for most people is because of the unknown with COVID-19, especially us women, as ladies. We are the caretakers. We like to plan everything. We like to know what's coming ahead for our families and stuff. And COVID has brought so many uncertainties, as mothers, as parents, as women, it's causing a lot of stress in the families. Like, are we, going to be able to stay home and take care of our children and still keep our jobs? Are we going to be, able to provide food for them? Like, how is it working from home and having to homeschool children? And for those that don't have, families, or those that are single, the isolation, it's a big stressor, not being able to go out and see your friends and socialize as you normally would. I think that's part of the reason that's caused a lot of mental health issues during this pandemic. Is mostly the fear of the unknown and what is happening right now, not being sure how long it's going to take and when we're all going to be able to go back to business as usual.
Anyone else?
Yeah, just to add on to that, it's like, just like she said, it's very, it's like, it's life changing, right? And I feel like as human beings, we don't really like change. So having the uncertainty, like she said, it's like an uproot of like, okay, what are we gonna do? And like, what's the plan moving forward, right? So there's so much uncertainty, but definitely it's life changing. So there's a lot of like anxiety playing into that too. So.
But why is it that, I was, watching CP24 the other day, and why is there such a huge emphasis on women and the issues of stresses and life stressors and the pandemic? There's almost like a correlation. You're a woman, and I pardon me if I'm wrong, but you're a woman, oh, you must have some trauma because of the pandemic. Why is that? Is this a myth, or is it, in your opinion, why is that? Why is it more associated with us compared to the men who are also going through it?
I feel like naturally as women, we're emotional. So society already knows that, okay, women are like emotional, right? And also we are nurturers, we feel, right? So I think already that puts us on like one side, like on one end of like the spectrum of, okay, we feel everything, we're emotional. So how are we gonna like juggle everything else that we do as women? Like, you have kids, like I don't, but like there are other areas of my life that I have to, focus on as women. And I just feel like it's just being emotional in general. That's why like people are like putting more focus on it. That's what I think, in my opinion. So
yeah, and
One thing,
to add to that, I also think that women talk about their feelings more often than men. I believe men are the same thing, and they're probably stressed out as well. But men have this macho thing of, I'm a man and I'm not going to talk about it and I'll just get through it and it's okay. Yeah. And women, we're more open to our feelings. We verbalize how we feel with our friends and our family. So probably it's higher among women because we are reporting and we are seeking help. We know that men don't like to go for help when they're suffering, but women, we do. And also we take care of a lot of people and a lot of things, so when we are affected, it kind of trickles down. Like if mom's not doing well, then, the kids are not really going to be doing well as well. So I think that's also part of it.
And so we're taking on a lot, then, you're saying, basically.
Yeah, taking on a lot, and there's a lot of guilt and shame as well that women tend to carry in general because we're the natural caregivers, we're the natural doers in a lot of households. So if you're stuck in a phase right now where you are powerless, that guilt and that shame are going to kick in a lot of different ways, and it will trickle into the anxiety because you feel like you should be doing more. That word "should" that carries a lot of judgment, a lot of self-judgment. And even women in all sorts of walks of life, we tend to carry that with us a lot because just from a very young age, we're caregivers, we're caretakers. And when we can't do anything or when we feel powerless, our hands are tied. Like you said, it trickles down into different avenues of life. And there's a lot of pressures that are put on us as well. There's a lot of expectations on women that we are multitaskers. We need to be able to do everything. And right now it's difficult to be able to do that.
Nora, you were going to say something to add to that?
Yeah, I think everyone really covered it, but like something that keeps coming up for me is like, and I'm very new to this realm, so I'm a new mom. I actually have a toddler, and I was really interested in coming to this conversation today just to talk about those experiences being pregnant in the pandemic. I know it's something that a lot of people said, I can't imagine that. So going through it had its own definitely hardships that I hope to, be able to talk about and support people in the audience if they want to like, get some supports around that. But I think caretaking responsibility is so big, and just watching, some of my in-laws and family members having to, juggle the no school, there's no pre and post care. For myself and a lot of my new mom friends, like, we can't even take our children to activities and be able to engage them in different sports and stuff. So naturally, as women, not only are we caretakers, we carry a lot of that load. So it's really difficult to manage that at this time. And also, having to take care of others. So a lot of us, take on additional responsibilities, whether it's elderly, whether it's, just friends and family that need that extra support in COVID. That's a lot of the responsibilities that we often take. So not being able to do all those different things right now can cause a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression amongst women, especially at this time.
And I totally would, agree with that. Just, me being a woman of color, and having 3 children, I mean, and both of them, 2 of them being in school, has added to the level of anxiety that, am I doing enough? And what I'm doing right now, is it enough? Is it going to affect my children later? It's all about, having, like Sana, well, all of you said, it's just the unknown. But then what about the middle ground? So there's anxiety and then there's depression. But what about the middle? Like the languishing, the people who are going through the motions and, they're not depressed, not anxious, but there's this term, Stephanie, if you don't mind, sorry to put you on the spot, but if you don't mind just touching a little bit about that.
Simone, I think you were going to say something, and then I'll jump in after.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. What I was going to say is like there's also overwhelm, and what the pandemic did is it put everybody in the hot seat in the same house. And usually in our normal life, we're all running around, running in, running out of a door, running in or out of a car, in or out of a sport event, and we just kind of like keep doing this thing in our life with the other people in our house. And with the pandemic, it put everybody in the same house at the same time for a really long time. And then the biggest question is, do I even like these people? I mean, to be honest, I like you when you're at school learning, now go. All right, you can't go anywhere. So all of it, and as well, if you don't have shared duty of teaching, then guess who gets to be the teacher as well? And that's a massive job. Like just teaching a whatever small child is a huge job, So it's not just that I saw a stat the other day that in the States, actually, the number of divorces has gone through the roof because of the pandemic for that very reason. It's because I don't even like this person. You could kind of avoid the question when you were running back and forth and pretending and doing this thing that I call exchanging daytimers. Oh, I'm taking Joey to this. Oh, are you? And yeah, I'm taking so-and-so to that. And it's just like a superficial level of living. And the pandemic has just brought us down to like the nitty gritty of real living, real life, and real interaction with each other on a 24/7 level. And that is just like so not normal, like in anything we've ever lived. So that there's also that, like just the raw reality of being around all of these people all the time.
And it is so true as well, because, but then you would think that when you were saying, Simone, about the in and outs and, we're go, to now there's a pandemic and we're basically being asked to stay home, stay with your family at all times. Wouldn't you think that, oh, okay, now I get to relax? But it's almost like staying home has increased that level of anxiety, and we don't understand why. It's actually added more stress to our lives than it did pre-COVID-19.
Yeah, it's a bit of a pressure cooker thing, right? Like, I mean, I'm West Indian. I know how to cook with a pressure cooker, but there's this little thing that you get to let the steam off, right? And with the pandemic, like there was no releasing of the pressure, and I think that that is what the biggest challenge was, is that there was no letting off of steam. You know, we were open, oh, we're shut down again, oh, we're open again, oh, we're shut down again, oh, you don't have a vaccine, oh, you know, and it was just like so many negative variables. And as human beings, we need variety, but we don't need constant negative variety. It's unhealthy and it's not normal, but that's what we've lived for about 1.5 years now. So that is the biggest challenge.
Yeah, and just emotionally, it's because, you know, people are just numbing themselves, and that's where I guess they're not completely depressed, they're not completely anxious, but they're just numb. And that's where, you know, so many different terms have come along, and a lot of studies have come out, like, you know, secondhand suicide or languishing is another one. If Stephanie wanted to discuss more about that, what's been going on and what we've been seeing a lot of in the media.
As we mentioned at the start of the conversation, I work in an employee assistance program, and primarily my role is to deliver the program and to administer it. And one of the things that we've been assisting with is just kind of paying attention to the different trends that are being highlighted by the media, by different news sources, healthcare professionals, the mental health professionals that we work with. And one interesting one that I came across was exactly that, an article on languishing. And it definitely piqued my interest, and it's piqued quite a few people's interest, because it was a term I've heard before, never really knew what it meant. And to me, it described to a T what we've been experiencing. It's that weird in-between uncomfortable phase where it's like you just want to shed your own skin, but you can't. And you just don't know what to do with yourself. And it kind of ties into as well, like when we go through a traumatic experience in life, it's a moment in time. And without getting into what PTSD stands for, but when there's a moment in time, you can learn to heal from that particular moment. There's no one specific moment here. We can all kind of pinpoint when things shut down, but it's been an ongoing kind of traumatic moment or long-lasting moment that has no end to it. And we just fall into this weird in-between phase where you're almost lethargic, because like there's the open and shut of absolutely everything. You're powerless, like the different feelings. Normally when we're go with our life, you don't have a chance to necessarily think about the things that are running in the background of your mind. Whereas right now you have no choice. It follows you from the bedroom to the bathroom to the backyard, and everywhere on your property, it follows you. There's no escaping it. And then when you have everyone, like you said, in your face, in your house all the time, that's constantly reminding you of the things that you're trying to forget, whether the issues that you're experiencing have anything to do with your family or not, there's just no escaping it. And people fall in that weird in-between phase where they're not really depressed. Maybe they are. They're not fully anxious. Maybe they are. And they're also discovering that some of these feelings, they're things that they've never experienced before, and they don't know how to name them. And there's no really cookie cutter checkbox to be able to fall into anything. So it's like, how do I feel? And a lot of people haven't even been able to identify fully how they feel. And languishing is a good way of it's a good term that kind of encompasses all of it. It's like, it's a bit of everything, but it's a bit of nothing at the same time.
But then because, you know, we talk about numbing a lot, because, you know, we're, you know, in my line of work, we basically talk to our patients about, you know, about how numbing is actually unhealthy, is a maladaptive coping mechanism. And so languishing is almost like, you know, we're trying to say it's okay. It's okay to feel that way, but not.
Yep.
Is it numbing, or, you know, it's different. Yes.
It's a very in-between phase. Like it's a new feeling that goes with the new experience, I guess, that everyone is going through right now. And I guess that's the newest trend, is putting a brand new name on a feeling that no one is able to fully identify or dissect right now, because this is all newness to us. And
Yeah.
even though there have been pandemics in the past, I mean, those generations are no longer here, so we can't necessarily draw on them. And where we're at right now in society, how we've evolved as a society, how people would have felt in a previous pandemic is not going to be the same as now, because circumstances are completely different. Women are working. Women may not necessarily have been working then. Their primary focus was to maybe be at home, whereas now you have a lot of different roles, a lot of different hats that women tend to wear. And it's a whole new ball game for almost every single woman, whether they're single, with or without children, family women. It's very interesting.
But then, so, and this question is for, everybody. At which point now does this become, not only it's quite multifaceted, a lot of people are affected, but then at which point now do we add culture to this issue? Because, for me, being a woman of color, I'm a Black woman. I'm also Caribbean. Numbing is normal for me in my culture. I'm sorry, but it is totally normal. So when I read this and they're saying it's not healthy, it's not, I mean, for me it is. It may not be healthy, but it was my normal to always not mask, but to say everything's okay. You don't need to cry about that. Anybody has a comment about this thing? How do we support our community to say that it's okay to cry?
Victoria, what I want to add to that is I think, it's normal. The numbing is normal. I'm East African Somali. That's definitely, people have had a lot of traumatic experiences as refugees, etc. And numbing is the normal part. But what is not normal is the social isolation that we're experiencing in the pandemic. So a note that I, am very cognizant of, especially with the families and the communities that I'm working with, is that social isolation is not normal to a lot of, different cultures. Like, we thrive in community. We thrive in coming together. In my personal experience as a newborn, I was so shocked that I wouldn't have the support that I normally thought growing up that you would have, that army of or village of mothers and aunties and sisters to be able to support you through those difficult times. So while the numbing may be considered normal, I think the social isolation is what's kind of exacerbating those feelings that people are experiencing. So it's good to have those conversations, to bring that to the forefront, because not every culture and individual is going to experience it in the same way.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. I also think that part of the reason from coming from my culture, my background, that people have not been talking about their feelings or numbing was the stigma attached to it. There was this stigma if you talk about your feelings, you're weak, you're whiny. So the whole gossip part of it, maybe you're confiding in a friend thinking that, this person is my support person. And next thing you know, you're hearing it from this person, you're hearing it from that person. So all those were barriers to kind of hinder us from opening up and speaking about how we're feeling or the struggles that we're having. There was this big stigma attached to it. And I believe now there still is a stigma attached to mental health or mental illness, or just, feeling emotionally unwell. Even when you talk to a friend about, I'm going through a hard time, I think I want to go to counseling. Counseling? We don't go to counselor. What are you talking about? So much. Why would you waste your money on that?
Yes.
Shopping, you don't feel better, and it's no, I need a professional to talk to. But other cultures are very accepting of going to a counselor and speaking about your emotions. So I think that's one thing that definitely is coming back from a cultural perspective.
Just to add on to that, speaking of counseling, I'm a very big advocate of counseling now, because just like everyone has said, being Black especially, it's counseling is that topic no one wants to talk about, because it's almost as if why would I go to someone I don't know to just air out my dirty laundry kind of thing, right? It's like they're just taking your money. And then being from a West African culture as well, it's more like, oh, just pray about it. Yes, pray about it, but also get professional help. Because for me, counseling has helped me to just like understand what I'm going through. Because like when you're in that like dark, in that fog, you don't really like understand, or like you can't really understand like what you're going through. So having that counselor that can help you just understand, okay, this is why I'm feeling this way, and just kind of dissect it, definitely does help. So
I grew up in a Jamaican household. You do not talk to people about your business. You don't talk to your friends about your business, because how is it going to make everybody look?
Yes. The image, yes, yeah.
The honor, like the amount of times where I was told you're not supposed to talk to people, don't chat our business with people. And at one point it's like, well, you know, everyone has something that they need to talk about occasionally.
Yeah.
And I always kind of stood out in my household because I felt that it was important. If there's something that's on your chest, like you need to talk about it, you need to process it. And it's only kind of later on in life when I picked my career path and what I was going to do in school that I realized, okay, I'm definitely straying away from that cultural side of myself, where I'm not focusing on you need to shush it down and not talk about it. I'm definitely pro counseling because this is the field that I'm kind of in right now. So
yes.
It's yeah, Caribbean culture is very focused on do not talk about what's going on at home.
It's such a funny juxtaposition, because on one hand we're saying, oh yeah, everything's great, sun's shining, we're Erie, it's got a great beat, and we're all just soca calypsoing down the road, right? And then on the other hand, like you feel like crap in your head. And then you throw in religion, you know, where you can only pray to God, but as human beings, we are communicators. So there are all of these clashes all over the place, you know, and as women, we have, again, like, it's just a complete, it's just a mixed bag of oxymorons and all shaken together and not even stirred nicely, you know, it's terrible. Yeah.
But the thing is also, you know, there's no recourse. We all know this, but then we all go back to, well, not all, I can't say all is such an absolute term, but we go, you know, we go back to our ways where, you know what, like I just will keep it to myself. Everything's fine. Everything's good. I'm smiling. But really, you know, we tend to forget that mental health is also healthcare. Just like you take care of your diabetes, your high blood pressure, you know, your kidney issues. Mental health is, you know, the study of the mind and being self-aware is just as important as it would be. You know, we take care of our hair, we take care of our skin. Imagine if we took care of our health, of our minds and mental health as well. So how do we support and communicate this to our communities?
Everything that's abstract in many communities, if you can't see it, it's not tangible, it's not real, and it makes you crazy. If it's something that's concrete, like fixing my hair, I mean, if I were to get a really bad haircut, you'd see it. I can fix that very easily with a wig. I can fix it by chopping off the other half of my head. My hair, sorry, not my head. Let me make that clear right there. But when you can't see, there's like a fear factor that's tied into it. And again, if you bring into religion, if there's something going on with you from a mental health perspective, then there must be a demon that's inside of you. That's the belief that a lot of people have. And let's bring you to an exorcist and bring that demon out, when no, it could very well be a diagnosable mental illness that could be treated perhaps with medication. I don't need to have a demon beat out of me.
Yes, yeah. You know, we talk about a lot of, you know, Black women, but, you know, we should actually, you know, be focusing more on, you know, general idea where it's persons of color, men and women. But, you know, and I'm going to ask this to Nora, you know, who, you know, your practice has been towards Indigenous women as well, or Indigenous people. Have you encountered a lot of pushback, reluctance?
Sorry, just to clarify, I work a lot with like the BIPOC like community, so not just specifically
Not
indigenous.
just that.
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. Sorry, you said pushback in terms of
Um,
receiving support?
you know, even if you work with them, or you work with, you know, different types of populations, have you noticed a lot of, you know, they come to you to seek help, but yet they're very evasive, very
Yeah. So it's
a
actually
lot of
interesting.
reluctance.
Yeah, so I mean, I love that that I work with both youth and families, because I see there's a lot of, you know, different in terms of the intergenerational gaps and dynamics that are happening. So a lot of times what I'll see is that youth are interested in actually getting services, and they want to connect with people because that's what their peers are kind of, you know, expressing to them. That's what they're seeing on social media with all these like Bell Let's Talk hashtags. There's a lot of kind of awareness on mental health, but sometimes even after one session, they'll go back to their parents and say, oh, you know, I had therapy, or, you know, I was getting help from somebody. And exactly as Stephanie was saying, people, you know, their parents telling them like, why are you telling us like family, you know, secrets or our family information to other people? Like, they're actually asking to seek support without their family members knowing, is what I'm seeing a lot of. But the good thing is, I think that young adults right now are really taking the initiative to seek support. So I actually launched my private practice about 2 weeks ago, and I am shocked at the demand. Like every single day, like me and my, you know, colleagues and friends that are doing this right now, like we just have like a strong unit together where we're just like giving each other referrals and trying to support the demand, because people are actually coming forth and saying, hey, enough is enough and I need the support. And they're actually being able to recognize that. And kind of going back to that that word that we talked about earlier about languishing, I think, you know, it's a new term for me. I haven't really heard it prior to the pandemic, but it's so important to be able to name our emotions. And so I appreciate when there's language that can kind of describe how we're feeling. And this word actually is something that I heard from my, you know, professional health, you know, friends talking about. They're in this complete feeling, this emptiness. And so this word was used to kind of describe their feelings. So while, you know, it might not be positive always, I think it's important that we're able to name that. And so I think we're moving in the right direction right now.
That's actually really nice to hear that you're getting a lot of requests from youth. And if you don't mind, what are the ages like?
Well, actually adults. So they're like young adults. I would say anywhere from like 16 to even like up to like 40. I've been getting, you know, people calling and asking for services. So yeah, it's exciting stuff. But also it's a need, right? So it's exciting in the sense, obviously, you know, people are coming for support, but at the same time, it just kind of emphasizes the need that's in the community right now.
But this is really different from our, you know, the times of my parents. And I'm not even talking about, you know, of course, you know, in the 90s, you know, we were, our generation, you know, we were, you know, that was 20 to 30 years ago. But even then, that was just 30 years ago. And even my parents then and what they say now about counseling or seeking help, it's unbelievable. And how do we bridge that gap between what we know now today to be it's okay to seek help, it's okay to get counseling, to the old school mentality, and explaining to our parents' generation that it's actually okay to actually delve into our mental health and, like you said, naming our feelings. How do we bridge that gap?
In some ways, oh, sorry, go ahead, Nora.
Oh, so just to kind of, I guess, close up that gap there is, you know, psychoeducation is so important, and it's something I really, really emphasize. So, you know, if parents and community members are not open to, you know, per se like therapy, I am a very like big advocate in going to the communities. I'm currently also working with a nonprofit organization as well. I recently moved from Toronto as well. So in any position that I do, you know, have the privilege of being in, I think psychoeducation is so important. So going to communities and having, you you know, these gatherings where we're able to talk to parents and, you know, talk about mental health and talk about grief and death and dying and all these things that are, you know, really prevalent in our community sometimes. So just having those conversations and providing education, I think, is a great place to start in terms of closing or bringing the gaps together. I'm not sure if we can ever really close them, but to bring them together.
Stephanie, Simone?
There's a lot of mirroring as well that would help. So when the older generations hear of their friends or other family members who are in the same age group as them who are seeking help, then it makes it more acceptable. There's less shame for them to carry, to realize, okay, well, if other people my age who look like me are getting that help, then maybe I can do the same thing too. Maybe I can at least just, you know, dip my toe in and see what these people have to say. Because that's typically how I hear them vocalizing it, is let's see what these people have to say. And then oftentimes it'll surprise them. They'll realize, okay, maybe this isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And if there could be more open communication within that generation as well, then it would help, in my opinion, to kind of bridge the gap between the older generation and younger ones, and being more open, everyone, about the fact that they're getting help.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think it's important to normalize the idea that your head is attached to your body. And that, you know, like we had discussed, Victoria, like you wouldn't ignore a broken hand or a broken leg, and there's no shame in taking whatever for pain medication. Like I mean, it's thankfully still attached. So, and most people really only care about their mental wellness when Alzheimer's starts to creep in. You know, and until then, we're okay just sort of saying, oh, well, never mind. You know, we'll just ignore that until we just really don't know what the heck's going on. And, you know, and just to say, like, that's a false equivalency of, like, there's only like two extremes. There's either nothing wrong, or I can't remember where I put my keys and the cat's in the fridge, you know, like, and that's not normal, you know. And to just say, look, there are your mind is as much a part of, obviously, your head. It's important to care for the wellness going on inside your head. Like, we care for our eyes, we care for our ears,
right?
You know, I mean, like, just to normalize and to have the conversation of, you wouldn't ignore a broken finger, you know. And the other thing with the whole pandemic is, so I mean, I'll say that I'm not, I grew up Catholic, but I'm not of any practicing anything, but there is a quote I often remember, and that quote is, "Hope deferred makes the heart sick." And with the pandemic, and with we're open, we're shut, and we keep hoping, oh no, it's not going to happen. Oh, we keep hoping, oh, it's not going to happen, and it actually creates a type of illness that we can't quite put our finger on. And that's part of the whole languishing thing as well, is that we I mean, now we have some hope because people are starting to be vaccinated, and, you know, the numbers are significantly going, like, we have hope, right? But in the middle of it, we had no hope. We kept having to defer hope. And that in of itself, you know, with communities, especially all the BIPOC communities, where we are very cultural, very community, very somebody bring a potluck and 5 people bring peas and rice, and, you know, like, I mean, like that whole idea of community and building and growing together and helping each other, and literally the whole village raising the kids, you know, like that whole thing has been taken away. And that's like our support group, like, you know, as a West Indian, as an African, cultures are the same, Chinese cultures are the same. When that's taken away, it creates a lot of stress, you know. So just now we know it's going to end, but that whole idea as well.
Okay, well then, you know, we're all healthcare professionals, or at one point, you know, we've all been practicing healthcare professionals. Let's talk hypothetically. COVID is over. We're all vaccinated. You know, in an ideal world, utopian world, you know, we've gone back to the way things were. Everyone's vaccinated. we're reaching where it's like polio. Polio is pretty much eradicated. So COVID is eradicated. But then what about the post-COVID stress disorders that a lot of researchers are talking about, especially among healthcare workers? What happens then? COVID is long gone, but yet there's still that remnant of that stress, that Simone, you touched a bit about that too. There's wellness, but then there's also still that stress that lingers. Mm-hmm. What's your opinion on that?
I think we're in for anybody that's in the medical profession, anybody that is a talk version of whichever you practice. I've had to kind of cycle in and out with my clients to say, like, I'm going to be away for this period and then I'll pop back in again. I literally got off of all social media except for one Instagram account I have for my glass. I have a hobby of making glass beads. That's the only thing I kept. I got off of everything else. I just simply couldn't, literally couldn't manage. To be slightly political, I literally couldn't manage watching all of the assault on my Facebook news feed about Donald Trump. Like, it was just, it was bad enough to deal with everything else. And then I had to deal with the madness over there. And I literally shut down my Facebook page because I thought, I don't want to give people that kind of access to my head, where it's just like pouring in and you can do this, was a doom scrolling, I think is what they call it. But so that's something that I had to do for myself, where, I need to care for me. With all of my other clients, it's a couple of them, we actually ended up helping each other. And so we had a closed group of either executive coaches and counselors, and we worked together for a period. And it was definitely a closed group of, we understand confidentiality, and we were free to say whatever we were feeling. And but the people who work in the healthcare industry, the healthcare professionals, the nurses, doctors, like especially nurses and doctors, they're in for, I think that's going to be a second wave of the pandemic, where it is not COVID related, but it is COVID related, and it is a pandemic. It's going to be very difficult.
Trauma, exactly.
Absolutely, yeah.
And there's a lot of talks about that. Anybody else?
Yeah. Stephanie, you're going?
Okay. I can talk about it after. It's okay.
Yeah. All right. So just to add on to that, I know that like a lot of nurses are burnt out because vacations are not being granted, like all of these changes at work and all that, right? I know a lot of coworkers that are like, once this is all done, I'm taking like a long vacation, and then there are others that are actually thinking of, I might maybe switch and find like another path, because it's like they're so stressed, and like just the whole change at work and just like the vacations not being granted because we are already short-staffed. So you can't also blame the hospital for not, giving out those time offs as well. So I feel like the burnout and like the PTSD of like COVID after this whole thing will just be like, it's not going to be too good.
I think too, go ahead, Stephanie, sorry. Yes.
In my workplace, because we're the internal employee assistance program for our staff, and our staff, a lot of them are servicing representatives because I'm in the union movement. And one of the biggest things that they have been reporting to us that they need support on is compassion fatigue. That's going to be it's going to be an even more significant issue as we progress, because when that adrenaline starts to go down, when people start crashing, they will have no compassion left, or very little compassion left to give to new clients, to new patients that are going to be coming their way. And that ties into the burnout. And how do you identify when you are experiencing compassion fatigue? What do you do about it then? There's one option, it's definitely switch fields, but is everyone who works in healthcare going to switch to a different field? If so, then we won't have anyone left in healthcare, right? And because this is an ever evolving situation, like Nora mentioned, there's new terms that are coming our way, there's new feelings. And we all have to adapt kind of together, because those of us who are in mental health need to be able to try to find a way, okay, how do we adapt to be able to help what's happening with our healthcare workers or with anyone else who's a first responder, who's a frontline worker in any kind of capacity. So that's what I think is going to happen. It's going to be a lot of compassion fatigue. And for us as well, we have to be mindful that it doesn't happen to us. A lot of self-care.
Yes, yes.
Yes, and I just want to add to that. I think as healthcare professionals, it's very important for us to take care of ourselves. We're in the field where we're always taking care of people, everything.
Others, yeah.
And even before COVID, it was stressful being a healthcare professional. As a registered nurse, it's a stressful job pre-COVID already, because you're dealing with people that are sick that can change at any time, and you're just very focused on that. And then COVID came and added to that. And now not only are you worried about taking care of other people, but also your health. Like, am I going to take this back to my family? You know, what happens if I get sick, and all these other things. But
that's the anxiety. Yeah.
The anxiety. The bottom line is, we can't take care of someone else if you are not okay. So it's very important to recognize when you're feeling burnt out, to get the help and take a break. Like, if you're not getting your vacation request met, then tell them, I need time off. Go on a leave of absence. You have to do what you have to do to take care of yourself and seek that help when you need it. You cannot just keep going and run yourself down, because that's not going to do you any good, and it's certainly not going to help your patient. You cannot be a good nurse or a doctor or whatever profession you're in to your clients when you're not in the best state of mind.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Advocate for yourselves. And I know like, a lot of places were short-staffed, and we're doing double shifts and things like that, and it is stressful, but it's important to advocate for yourself. When you need that time off, request it. And if you don't get it, then be like, I'm going to take this time off and I need that. Go and see your doctor and get that medical note and get that weeks to, be back to your place, because you only have one body, one mind. And if that's not working properly, then it's going to really affect you. So I think it's important to advocate for ourselves and speak out.
Absolutely. But then, and me being a nurse as well, we all wear that invisible cape. We want to be heroes. We want to help our coworkers. We don't want to leave our coworkers stranded, in the battlefields or on the floor or, on the phones. And Senna, you brought up amazing points that, I, for myself, as a, I should share that story, is that, I take on a lot myself. And, taking care of myself is actually one of the last things I think of, because, I'm not only a nurse, but I'm a mom. I take care of my ailing parents. I moved to Ottawa to take care of my parents, but yet I have other things too. So, we take on so much, and it's just so important that, it's not only ourselves, but we also have to look at the signs of the people around us. And I find that we're not doing that. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're in a pandemic. We're all at home indoors. How can we tell, our family members or, anybody, lay people, to look for the signs of languishing, depression, anxiety? How, because I find that we're not, there's just a lack of support within our community. And is it because we don't know what it looks like, what depression looks like?
No, I don't think that's it. I think that if you are not in a good state yourself, you can't recognize what's happening around you. right?
Mhm,
So part of
mhm.
being able to recognize what's happening around you is being in a good state yourself. Like, what are the signs of depression? What are the signs of suicidal ideation? If someone says, I'm going to kill myself, whether it being it a joke or whatever, you have to take it seriously. But if you're not in that state where you're even paying attention to what they're telling you, or the signs of, your child sleeping all day and not wanting to get out of bed, that's a sign of depression. Or someone being so anxious, maybe having a young child, they're now potty trained and all of a sudden they're going back to not being potty trained. That's a stressor right there. So if you're not in the right state to be able to recognize all these things that are happening, then you can't help them. So it is very important to take care of yourself. That's the only way you can help other people. And as a healthcare professional, you're saying like, oh, I don't want to leave my teammates, my coworkers, like I don't want to, leave them not feeling well. But if you're not in a good place, you can't possibly practice practicely. You're going to be medication. You're going to be a burden to the team. You know what I mean? You're going to drag everybody down because you're not paying attention to your patients and what they need, and you'll be making errors, and that's putting more people in danger. It's better to just have that time out when you need it and then get the help, and that's the only time that you can actually help other people around you. But yes.
Have that self-awareness, but it's difficult if you don't know how to be self-aware to actually integrate that into your self-care. So how would you even ask someone, how can you identify your self-awareness, your level of self-awareness of how you're feeling? How would you even ask that? How would you have that conversation with someone?
I think one of the things that that I do recommend to my clients is that they journal. And I know that, you tell a Caribbean person to journal every morning, they'll laugh you out the door. Let's start right there. but I think it is part of, Stephanie, what you're saying is to be like, how am I feeling right now? And to carry a little book around. And that's such a simple thing, and maybe we don't want to take on and be the working reference point for everybody else's mental wellness. Like, we cannot do that. But if we feel able, and you had a little, like, go to the dollar store is not open, so never mind, but were it open, and could we go and get little booklets to just carry them around and just give it to someone and say, like, why don't you write down how you're doing? Like, just a simple, how am I doing right now? Question. It doesn't have to get very complicated, but just how am I doing right now? And the other thing that is really good is to encourage people to speak to their doctors, because doctors can do counseling calls on the phone. And it is billable to OHIP. So they're not just listening to you yapper for no, you know what I mean? Like our doctors or whoever our healthcare providers are, they can offer counseling to patients. So to encourage people to speak to your doctor, speak to, like, there's a crisis lines you can call, like there's so many, but people don't think of that when they're in wherever they're at. And even professionals, I was speaking with a doctor the other day, and she was just like, I am really not, like, I'm faking it, but I'm really not making it, And I thought, well, that's just like, really good humility. And it's difficult. Humility is a difficult thing for them, especially when people who are supposed to have it together they don't have it together. And for them to be able to reach out and to say, and for us to say, it's okay. Like, we're all struggling, right? So just,
If I can just add as well, I want to go back to Senna. Is that how to pronounce your name? When you talked about, healthcare professionals, something that I had a conversation about just yesterday, so I need to share with everyone here that's listening. It's so important to set boundaries for ourselves. So as a counselor, something that I see that happens a lot to myself and my colleagues is that people will just kind of like have verbal diarrhea in terms of what's going on for them and just dump. And I don't even think you need to be a counselor. If you're in a healthcare professional, if you're a life coach, if you're in the employment sector, if you're in any privileged position that you can offer supports to other people, especially during the pandemic, you are now considered an expert. People are coming to you for answers and they want them now, right? Or they want comfort, or they want guidance. So having boundaries is so important for us. And I actually had to do like a play role, a role play with my friend to just feel like, what does that look like? And that's just, asking for permission and saying, do you have time for me to talk to you right now? Or can I share some important things that I just need to get off my chest right now? And kind of getting into that realm where it's normal for your colleagues, your friends, your families, and anyone that you're a provider to be able to ask you if you have the capacity prior to moving forward is a really good conversation that I had yesterday. Has already helped me so much in terms of that. In terms of how to support other people, I think what's going on right now is like that whole idea of like catastrophic thinking, like of like it's the end, or we're not going to make it, or I don't know how I'm going to handle this. And for someone who was pregnant during the pandemic, every single day I was like, I'm done. I don't know how I can do this. It's in God's hands. I'm not in control anymore. And it was like a lot of catastrophic thinking, which made it really difficult to engage with people. So, or just even to manage my day-to-day. So I think something important is to kind of try to break down our thought process and ask ourselves, okay, I'm thinking of a lot of things. Let's just prioritize what the main challenges are for me. And when you're able to prioritize your challenges, you can ask yourself, okay, what of these challenges is true? What are the actual facts? What is the evidence that I have to support the thinking that I'm going through right now? And just to kind of help you rationalize those thoughts is a really good place to start, because it takes a few minutes, right? It just practice is the most important part when it comes to being able to manage our thoughts. So I think that's a really important tip to just kind of be able to go through the motions right now. So that's exactly what we're doing. And another thing is, guys, is to also have like a mental checklist in terms of risk factors. So I think people who are already like predisposed to, being at risk are people that we need to check on. Obviously, people who are in more vulnerable positions. So I know, Victoria, you shared that you're a mom, that you're working, that, you're handling all these things. So that saying of like, even check on your strong friends is really important, and everyone else as well, I think. So, yeah.
Yes, and that's a good point. Checking in, and it's not only checking in on yourself, but it's checking on the people that you think they're handling everything, but meanwhile they're in the corner crying. You don't know. You never really know what someone's experience is, and so it's really important to check on one another. But then, I think the pandemic has, it has brought some of us together, but it's also distance, like, we were talking about social isolation. But what about the high level of suicides that we're hearing, not only in adults, but in the youth, young people, not being able to, and we don't know all of the reasons, if it's just COVID related or just predisposed mental health conditions. We don't know the whole story, but it is out there. The numbers are high, but where are the resources? What are we doing? Or what are we not doing?
Can I just touch on the question that you were asking before, Victoria, in terms of, hypothetically speaking, COVID is over, what now? What's next? Personally, I find that the expectation that life is going to go back to exactly how it was prior to March, whatever, in 2020 is to the detriment of most people, because if that's what they're holding on to, that life is going to be exactly as it was before that date.
Yeah.
Setting yourself up to fail, setting yourself up to fall. And
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the media is just so focused on life is going back to normal. Get your life back to where it was before. I'm like, it's never going to be what it was like before.
No.
So I think that definitely ties into a lot of perhaps the suicides that a lot of people are experiencing, because they can't envision life as they knew it before. So if they can't envision life as they knew it before, and they can't envision what life is going to look like, all hope is lost. And what do you do with that at that point?
Yeah.
That narrative needs to be changed in a lot of ways. And I've definitely changed that narrative for myself. I can't speak for others, but I've definitely worked on that narrative for me to not get stuck on what life was like before, because there was a whole grieving process that went into what I thought life was going to look like last summer, for example, or even last fall. And where I wanted my life to be by this point. And I realized, okay, I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board, whatever that is right now. And there's a resilience piece that kind of ties into it, but not, the media is definitely not doing a good job at putting that out there.
Absolutely, yes. And the media has played a huge bit in that, in those numbers as well. Anybody else that would have a comment on that, on the high rise of suicides and in the youth and adults alike?
Yeah, if I could just add, I think, you know, obviously social isolation and loneliness has really contributed to, you know, thoughts of suicide and even completion of suicide. So I think, you know, the number one thing to do is just ask. You know, I know sometimes it might be really difficult and you might think that you're going to encourage a person to complete suicide, but that's not always the case. You know, if you genuinely ask somebody and they're able to express that and share that with you, then they know that at least somebody cares and that they can trust somebody in these conversations. And then just, I know it's really hard and not everyone has, like, you know, suicide assistant training and stuff like that. So just, like, you know, just for even the general people who are listening, is, you know, once the person does express to you that they are having suicidal thoughts, is to kind of like just walk with them through that conversation and see what the plan is. Is it active? You know, do they have a plan in place? What does that look like for them? And if there's a plan, helping them de-escalate and providing the, you know, crisis supports and things like that that are in place, but also just, you know, creating a safety plan, like seeing who the supports are in the arena with this person, right? And, you know, don't get overwhelmed. I know it sounds like a really difficult conversation to have, but it's a step-by-step situation, and there's a lot of supports online as well. So seek that support and just don't be afraid to ask the person, because even for myself as a counselor, sometimes I have no idea, but our intake form, you know, asks individuals, and I'm so surprised already at how many folks have checked off, yes, I've had suicidal ideation, or in the past, or even presently. And that's just because of a paper that's asking them. So then imagine if, you know, I take that and actually engage with them as well. So yeah, just, I encourage all health professionals, just anybody who is in a helping profession, to you know, be mindful that that's something that's happening, and don't be scared to have those conversations. So yeah, isolation, loneliness really do increase those feelings, but also like unemployment, you know, poverty, housing, like all these, you know, our basic needs are very important to us, and a lot of people are struggling with just that itself. So those are all things to kind of like look out for when having conversations.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add to what Nora said about like suicidal ideation. It's great when you ask and people will tell you, but sometimes they will not admit that they are having suicidal thoughts. So there are certain things to look for, maybe change in behavior, sudden change in behavior. Sometimes you see that they were depressed, they weren't kind of themselves, and then all of a sudden they have a burst of energy, they're very happy. That's a sign that, you know, something, they're planning something. Or maybe they're giving away their prized possessions, they're telling you, oh, like, you know, if I'm not here anymore, I'd like you to have this, or, you know, something that's really important to them. So there could be signs to look, these are some of the signs to look for when someone's around you that will not tell you that I am having thoughts of, you know, hurting myself. And just look for these signs. And also, if you're a parent, check in with your children, like you said, Victoria, ask them, how are you doing? Talk to them about the pandemic, about COVID, because a lot of them don't understand what's going on. You know, try and limit their exposure to the news and social media, because they may not be able to understand it, but try and break it down in their perspective. This is what it is, and this is what it helps them to feel better, because they know that, you know, they have better information coming from you than just general information out there that can cause them to be more anxious. And also, one thing that I believe has caused an increase in, you know, suicide rates among the youth is substance abuse. You know, that's a big part. Substance abuse, drugs and alcohol, like all those things, they start using to help them feel better, but then it makes them feel worse, and then that increases the rates in the suicide rates. So that's part of it as well.
Just to add on to that as well. Oh, sorry. Is someone
No,
going?
go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Just to add on to that as well. Like, I have known people who have been in that space as well, and what they wanted in that moment is to just feel like they are loved. There's someone who actually cares for them.
Yeah.
So just also just looking at someone who is like, who's always happy or who's always like calling you or whatnot, and all of a sudden they're not answering their calls, they're like isolated, like withdrawal and all of those things. Just like look for those little signs as well, because it could show that there's something else going on. Like I withdraw when I'm going through my own stuff. I don't want to talk to anyone. So those are the times that people that know me would start calling me and messaging me and being like, hey, I know something is going on. Then I would, open up. But just like Senna said, not everyone would open up as well. So it's just finding that balance and knowing the person and what they do or how they act. Sorry, I would say.
Yeah, and oh, sorry, go ahead, Simone, go ahead. I'll add something after.
I mean, it's true. And I think this conversation in of itself is obviously a microcosm of what's going on out there, where we are already trying to figure out how do we help those people. And I would say that that's a little bit of we need to be careful about that, that although this is what we do in whatever way we do it, that we don't take it all on ourselves to be the solution for everybody. Because I mean, we all know that's a disaster waiting to happen. One of the things that is a good tool, like there are resources online. So when you get people thinking not just when is COVID going to end, because that's, I mean, God only knows what the answer to that question is. So have them think of a different question. So there are like personality profiles online that I think are really great, and they're free, So for young people and for anybody, do a personality profile. Like, who am I? What do I like to do? What part of my life cycle am I in? I wish the government did, and I actually was going to plan to speak to my MP about it, where the government puts more government resources online. So crisis line and stuff like that. But even those, they're funded by volunteers. But there are free courses online. I just saw the other day, like you can learn, what was it I just saw? Oh, you can learn pearl knotting, how to knot. I don't know how they're going to do that online, but it doesn't matter, right? Like, but they're and to teach young people that, or anyone, that there are free courses online. And just like literally, if you're going to doom scroll, well, you might as well doom scroll through Udemy, or Stanford University has free courses, Harvard has free courses. Like there are a ton of free courses online. It doesn't matter if you pass it, like just take it as an interest, Stanford has a really cool program called the Alice Project that they encourage young women in IT. Like they're just, so I like resources like that, where it's just think of something different than COVID, than whatever we're ruminating about, right? That the thing that keeps going around, like our thoughts are little gerbils on a wheel. Yeah.
I think it's today actually one of the kids in my one child in my son's class today asked her teacher, said, Madame, when are we going to go back to class? Like I miss seeing you guys. I miss seeing you. I miss seeing you. And it kind of broke my heart that the teacher dismissed it. I was like, I don't know. Right? And she was like, oh. And I find like, I think this is something that should be really important in adding to our curricula, because what about our young children too? This conversation was more adult based, the youth, but what about our kids? You know what I mean? And how are we, I said earlier, we should talk to our kids about it, but what about the schools? You know what I mean? There's a high rates of suicidality among the youth. Are we talking about it in schools? Or are we sitting down with our kids online and saying, listen, are you okay? I was listening to a podcast earlier, actually a couple of weeks ago, and the counselor was saying, don't ask your friend, how you doing? Because it's such an open, how you doing? Ask them personally, are you okay today? I feel like we're not doing that to our kids or even to each other. Any comments on that?
I want to speak to the youth work. I'm like getting so inspired by this conversation. Like I almost like want to go back to work right now and do so many things at the moment. But I'll pause on that. It's 8:16. But okay, so a couple of things I want to touch on. So Simone, you talked about doom scrolling. That's the first time I heard that terminology. I love it. But something I want to bring to the forefront, especially for, you know, folks here who might be around youth and children, is that there's algorithms and they're real. And so what you seek kind of seeks you back on social media. So young people who are looking for information that might just be typing in like, you know, COVID, when is this going to end? Or they want to know more information. It's a good thing, but also what they end up seeing on their feed is a lot of that information. So whether it's COVID based, whether it's like, you know, whatever their curiosity is. So just maybe be mindful of like, you know, how often they use their phones or just using their phones without any supervision, because sometimes you don't even know it, but you're doom scrolling because the algorithm is feeding that information to you, and it's really hard to disengage from it. Something else that I've seen a lot of young people do when they're, you know, going through, you know, maybe depression, anxiety, or just difficult feelings, is they also disengage from social media. Well, for adults, that might seem normal because we're just regulating, you know, how we're feeling and what we want to spend our time on. For young people who are really obsessed with social media and just being on their phones 24/7, that should kind of be a flag just to be like, hey, what's going on? If you see a young person saying, I deleted Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok because it's too toxic, what's going on? What happened? Did someone get bullied? What, like, look into that, because I think a lot of them are just saying, you know, no, I just got off of it. But a lot of times there's things happening in the background as well. I did have one more point, and it was the last thing that you suggested. Oh, look, the youth work. So I'm currently working at a community agency in Ottawa, and I'm connected to a lot of folks who are trying to work with young people. And I'm seeing that there's kind of a resistance between community agencies who are already working in schools and providing support to the young people, and how we're trying to now get into that same realm of work virtually is really hard. So I'm seeing an entire group of outreach workers and, you know, counselors and therapists and clinicians and school social workers and everything that want to engage with young people. But because the schedule at school is already difficult and teachers are having, you know, difficulty engaging young people just to even come to class, the idea of having, you know, programming, additional programming within school hours is kind of impossible. So but just hearing this conversation makes me kind of go back to the drawing board and ask myself, my colleagues and other agencies, like, how could we be more intentional of how we connect with young people while they're at school? Because it sounds like these teachers, you know, and educators need support to have these difficult conversations. So ooh, I'm ready. I'm excited. I'm ready.
To be honest with you, this question basically came from this experience today.
Wow.
You know, where it was completely dismissed, and you can tell that the little girl was, you know, and they're 6-year-olds, and you know, she was really, and it broke my heart because she was like, Madam, you know, really, like, I missed you. I miss seeing my friends, you know, and you know, like, my parents are working, and I need help. I need to be with you guys. And she's like, I don't know, I don't make that decision. And it was like, that's it. And then back to, you know, it's not her fault. It's not the teacher's fault. It's because there's lack of training. So,
yeah.
You know, do we need to go to our MPPs, or do we need to? What do we need to do at this point?
Well, I mean, I would say in that particular situation to speak to the school principal so that they can have a group chat with the teachers to bring up awareness. I mean, the teachers are burnt out. And the other thing, in some communities, they might be living in apartment buildings and they will be doing less well than kids who grow up in homes, or because you've got the space, you've got place to go and be somewhere else, right? But if kids are growing, or people are growing up in apartments, and you know, 2-3 bedroom apartment, like, that's very, very stressful, you know, and then they can't even go out the hall, they can't go in, you know, they can't do anything. But I would speak to the school principals. I know that the government knows that there's another giant bell curve of madness coming with mental wellness or mental illness. And what are they going to do? What services are they going to put in place? Not just for healthcare providers, because you guys are a whole different bell curve, but the general public who don't have the tools. And I mean, it sounds like it's the same, but it really isn't. You know, healthcare providers have a whole different set of needs than the regular population. And so I think that that's going to be a massive Canadian government initiative to have to push on. And I think it's good for all of us who are in the industry, or I mean, for lack of a better word, profession, that we contact our MPs to say, look, what are we doing? And they know it's coming, but they really do need to hear from us about, like, this is going to be madness. Like, if we thought COVID was crazy, we're going to have an awful lot of medicated people. And to that point, I thought it was very funny in January that the government of Ontario, they started running these very gentle ads of saying, you know, February is dry February, or some kind of connotation to that. And I thought, how much are people drinking? And that the government is sort of suggesting that we have a dry February. I thought it was funny.
But that's the problem.
Yeah.
I know.
It's a problem, and it's not being addressed.
It's
right?
not funny. I mean, alcoholism isn't funny, but I just thought if the government's putting out like just this, and I only saw it for a couple of weeks and then it stopped.
Yeah.
I think there's an awful lot of drinking going on, and the government would know because it's their coffers, right?
It's the one thing that's open. The LCBO is open, right? And it leads to the question where it's like, well, why is that? If we see these numbers, what are they doing about it? And so there needs to be lobbyists. There needs to be some sort of push, not only from healthcare workers, but from lay people as well, because we're all in the homes with these people developing habits that they didn't have before.
Yeah. No, I think that we really should encourage people to reach out to their MPs.
Yes.
More federal than local level, to be honest, to just say like, hey, what's the plan? Or can we all try to pass around a white paper to create a plan?
Yes.
I know they're thinking about it, but for sure, if we keep it on top of the agenda,
yeah,
it would be a good thing.
Anybody else has anything else to add or to say, or any tips as well would be greatly welcomed.
Just kind of circling back to the comment earlier around what you can say to someone when you're talking to them that's beyond just how are you or how was your day. One thing that I've found that it would provoke conversation with friends and family is asking what was the highlight of your day? What was the low point of your day? Kind of forcing them to expand a little bit more. With some people, definitely I got met with some resistance, but for the most part, it's a type of question that went over really well because it forced them to stop and think about at least one positive element in their day. And of course, I mean, no one's day is perfect, but just kind of reflect on both of those little points. And then usually it'll trigger some kind of conversation. It'll steer off from there. And it kind of stems away from just the basic, how are you and how are you doing today? Because we know that most people either don't know how to answer that question or we already know the answer before they actually answer it for a lot of people.
Just to add on to that, something I started doing recently is asking people, what is that one thing that's stressing you out? And I'm surprised that people are actually answering. Because if you say, how are you doing? It's like, oh, I'm fine. I'm okay.
I'm good.
Right?
Yeah,
I'm good. I do that all the time, right? But I've noticed like being like specific and saying, what is that one thing that's stressing you? Like, of course, other people would not answer. They'll be like, oh, everything is fine. But then I've been like shocked by the response that I'm getting. I'm like, okay, this is good. So people are actually willing to, well, for the most part, they're willing to talk and like express what's going on, right? So just to keep that in mind too.
And what's amazing about that is sometimes they just wanted to have somebody like you to listen. It makes a world of difference, and we talked about checking in before. Checking in is so part of mental health, and we tend to forget how healing and therapeutic it is when you check in on your friend who seems strong, seems to have it all,
Mhm.
and you hear just a waterfall
Yeah.
of issues that they're going through. And so we not only need to check on ourselves, but we check on each other.
And just one more thing, like I think we should also, like, when you check on people, just kind of like learn how to listen and like give your opinion, because it's like some people at some point they just want you to listen, not to give like an opinion. So you can also just be like, do you want me to like give my opinion or something, or do you just need me to be present right now, you know? So that's another thing. Yeah.
I know, for me personally, if I'm calling somebody to say, oh, this is what's happening, blah, 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 it exactly like you said, Sophie, I don't want to hear your opinion. You're not a professional. You're not my counselor. I just need an ear to listen. I don't do that often because, I don't know, part of it is my Caribbean ways, but keep it private.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think we should all use those moments to we're all in this together. COVID has impacted us in ways that we didn't even think. At first when COVID happened, and our bosses were like, okay, go home, like get all your stuff together, and you're going to be working from home. I was like, what? Yes. I got everything ready and was ready to go home. Like, yes, no problem.
Yeah.
But then
Start the car.
It's hard. You got kids too. You got it's not easy. And so that social, we're social we're social people. So how have you guys, personally, before we end, we have about 2-3 minutes. Each of you, how have you guys been keeping up with your, social interactions while keeping your social distance? Stephanie.
I'm also a fitness instructor. I teach two different formats of classes.
Okay.
Zumba and Strong Nation, which is a high intense program. And it's been my lifeline. As much as for some of my regulars, my participants, they said, like, you're keeping me in check, you're keeping me sane. I'm like, it's reciprocated, because this is how I can stay connected with individuals a few times a week. And I'm naturally an introvert. So to me, hermiting is normal, but there comes a point where hermiting is no longer good. And I kind of stray on the side of really hermiting a lot. So this has forced me to not do that. And I can say this is what's definitely kept me sane for the last 1.5 years, is adapting to virtual teaching and everything that came along with it.
Yes. Nora, how have you been keeping up with your, social interaction and staying connected?
Yeah, for me, as I said before, I'm a new mom, so I've had like new social circles. So I'm like in a lot of moms group that help me kind of keep me sane and keep me informed on different things, which is great. But I spend a lot of time outdoors. That is just literally like my go-to every time I get a chance, between naps, between work, between, taking care of the little guy. We go outside a lot, and sometimes it's with like people in my social bubble, or sometimes just with family or friends, and we try to keep that distance. But just being outside has been amazing. And even this weekend, it was like really, really a tough weekend that I had, but like I just spent a lot of time outside, and it was really helpful. So I encourage like just getting steps in, like just whether it's in your basement, whether it's on the stairs, whether it's, walking around your house, just to stay active. But if you could also like do it safely outdoors, I would highly recommend that as well.
Okay, Senna.
Yeah, one thing that's really helped me, I like walking, and not walking because of exercise, just walking to get fresh air.
Yes.
It's important as you're walking, you're getting the exercise, you're getting fresh air. You just even, passing by and seeing strangers pass by you and saying hi, hello, that's just something that keeps you going. And also, another thing that's getting me going is my spirituality, being connected to my faith and the things of God. That has also kept me going. And then when I do get to see my extended family, that is just a icing on the cake, you know. It's just
Yeah.
fun to be with family, not my immediate family. My immediate family is fun too, but when my extended family comes, it's just a different perspective, you know, having those adult conversations and seeing how they're doing. So that's one thing that has kept me going. Yes.
That's good. How about you, Simone?
Well, I have, so like I mentioned earlier, I melt glass. So I joke and I say, I'm just going to go play with fire now. I guess that's what I do. And I make glass beads, like, you know, like Pandora beads and stuff like that. So that's what I do. And earlier I was just making beads just to kind of check out more than anything else. But then I started a project, and that's been really, really great for me. My dad has been pretty sick lately, and so I started a bead project with him, and so he's going to be helping with that, which is really nice. Actually, all of my family is going to be helping with the project, and so I'm donating glass beads. Glass has different names, and one of the names is sangre, which is Spanish for blood, and another one's hemoglobin. So I'm sponsoring a blood donor clinic, and where everybody that donates blood is going to get a bead.
In Ottawa?
Yeah.
Wow.
And we're just planning it now. I think I'm up to 150 beads. I have to make 300.
Yes, that's good.
Which may or may not increase my mental not wellness. But it's just been really good. Like I said, I got off Facebook. And having this bead project has been really good for me and for like all of my family, to just kind of focus outward and just not focus on my dad being so sick. So that's been really good. Yeah. And outdoors moving around is also really good for me. Gardening. Yeah.
Amazing. And Sophie, that's amazing.
Lots of video calls. I love nature as well. So I have been like finding all these new like places in Ottawa. So yeah, I'm just out just finding hiking trails and like all these new areas. So yeah, I've just been in nature basically. Yeah.
Yes, that's really good. I mean, I think that's one of the things, like I moved from Durham region to Ottawa last year, so they're close to Toronto. And I was all excited, you know, like new city, yes, you know, and then COVID happened. So you can just imagine the desperation of, oh my goodness, you know, how am I going to meet new people? So even being part of Leading Ladies has been so rewarding, and meeting new people and being able to be engaged. So that's how I've been able to stay connected. And so, you know, to our viewers or listeners, you know, like stay connected. You know what I mean? Like you've heard different ways of being engaged and being connected, and you know, taking walks, you know, fitness or creation, faith, you know, faith has been such a huge thing for me as well. And so, you know, keep in mind that, you know, you're not alone. You know, if you've got, you know, there's so many resources out there. And if, I don't know if Nora would want to touch on that a little bit, you know, some of the resources that people can go into, especially in the Ottawa region, or anywhere else. I know that you came from Toronto, so if you've got anybody that could use that information, that would be great before we finish off.
Yeah, so I was doing a little preparing and planning before this. I'm like, I don't want to leave people without resources. So the number one resource right now that I would suggest for everyone, because it's really easy in terms of navigating, is if you go to ottawapublichealth.ca/COVID mental health, it actually has a list of all the resources that you probably would need to provide to people. So it has like crisis line resources, like resource lists in the communities, for children, toddlers, youth, adults. It even has resources for like parents who are concerned about youth as well. So it has a plethora of resources that's kind of like a one-stop shop. If people are looking for individual and private therapy. There's Psychology Today, where you can look for a therapist just by name or by city. And you can also continue to filter that by like gender or spirituality or race, etc. So it's great to be able to navigate that. I recently came across another resource called the Black Therapist List. I believe they, I think it's quite new. I'm not on there yet, so I haven't really heard about it, but someone put me onto it and I love it. I believe it's for the different regions as well as Ottawa, Toronto, like all across. So they have different filters where you're able to access like direct Black therapists. Another overall resource is please tap into your community health agencies, tap into community centers that are around you, because from what I'm seeing, I got back here like 6 months ago, and I'm already seeing that there's a lot of like programming and a lot of good intention to provide programming, but there's a lack of connectedness within the community because things are so virtual now. So if you have any ideas of how to, connect the two, or, if you know of people who are in need but need resources, just if you can be that system navigator, I think would be a really good place to start as well for folks. So that's a little bit of community, but also if you're looking for your own resources as well.
Okay, perfect. And, Nora and Simone being a life coach as well, is there any way that anybody can reach out to you? Or I don't know if you're accepting clients. Sorry to be putting you on the spot, but,
yeah, that's okay.
In advance, but I don't know if Simone can add to any other resources, if not yourself, but any other avenues.
So if someone wants to get in touch with me, if they can get in touch with you, and you can certainly give them my email.
Okay.
As far as resources, I really encourage people to go online to, like, personality profiling is just a hoot. It's free, you can just throw it up there. So there's one called 16personalities.com. That's really great. The Myers-Briggs personality tests. If you just Google what are free university courses, and it's like, when I say university, I don't mean like, physics or like rocket science or anything, but they just have like really great accessible resources. Coursera has some. Just look online to, like, when you see your personality profile, you can then, like, if it says, well, you'd be a really good journalist and you never thought about that, and you take a little course that's how can I write a little article or a journal piece, that's a great way to get our focus away from COVID and kind of up and outward. That's where we want to be looking. What new thing can we do?
Excellent. Well, these are great resources. And like Simone says, if anybody out there is looking for these resources or want to get in touch with either Nora or Simone, please feel free to email us at leadingladieScanada@gmail.com or leadingladiesottawa@outlook.com. Final things.
I want to add one thing as well.
Yeah, no, so I just wanted to add, I am currently accepting clients. So if people go to Psychology Today and type in Nora Elmi, they'll be able to find me. Things are filling up fast, which I am grateful for. So what I'm doing is working with other colleagues in the Ottawa area to then provide resources to folks who are still looking if I can't provide that support. So I just want to encourage folks that if you do message me and I'm unable to work with you, that we will be giving you, or me and my colleagues will be giving you resources to other available therapists, but also community resources. So if people are just kind of a little bit specific on what their needs are, they can contact me through Psychology Today, and then I'll be able to help navigate resources with folks as well.
That's okay. Yeah, that's actually really, really good. Yes. Okay. Thank you so much for that, Nora. And so again, yes, if you do want to get in touch with Nora and you didn't get to catch where you can find her, always feel free to contact us at Leading Ladies Canada through Instagram, email, as I said, leadingladieScanada@gmail.com. We can definitely help you get or link up with these providers such as Nora or Simone. So I do thank you so much for listening in. I thank you, all the participants, Sophie, Stephanie, Nora, Simone, Senna. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Mental health is so important. We're looking for you guys to thrive and not survive. we do want to survive this, but we want to be thriving. And so that's why the title of the webinar was, are you surviving? Are you just coping, or are you thriving? And so we want all of us to be thriving at the end of this. And so get the resources, talk to people, stay engaged, don't numb your feelings.